Hey everybody, welcome back to the GodXP Spiritual Fitness Podcast. I am your host, Anthony Polanco. You can call me Aunt P if you prefer. Today we're very fortunate to have our special guest, Cheryl Stelte. She's got over 25 years experience as a spiritual teacher, healer, and coach. She's an author and the founder of Intuitive Energy Healing and Empowerment Practitioner Program. Her mission is to help people accomplish their purpose by ultimately finding their unique way and God moving through their life. So we're very lucky to talk to her and just hear about her life and her experiences thus far. Cheryl, without further ado, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm thrilled to be here, Anthony. Thank you so much for inviting me here today.
It's my pleasure. I just love that you're so bold and passionate about helping others, and just your fearless approach and your bold approach to marketing and promoting your spiritual work, your spiritual business, I think it's very inspirational for me, and it's very attractive. So I wanted to hear your story and just hear about how this mission came about in your life.
Boy, you just really touched on something, the bold. I'm actually getting emotional right out of the gate here because the bold, I haven't always been so bold in this way. In that, when I first began on a spiritual journey, it was for my own healing and empowerment, absolutely not to help anybody else. It was, I had left a marriage of 13 years. I was married to an abusive alcoholic. I had 2 children. And so I found myself out on my own, and I was suffering from severe depression when one day at the beach, when I had a friend practicing kinesiology on me, that was as spiritual as I got back then. This was all new. I was like, oh, this kinesiology is really something. And interestingly enough, my younger brother, who had taken his life a year before, his spirit showed up.
Wow.
And his message to me was to start meditating. And I was blown away. I thought, what is all this spiritual stuff? And when I got back to town after that weekend, I was searching out meditation places, and they would ask me, I would phone, and they would say, why do you want to meditate? Well, to speak to my deceased brother. They would say, we don't have that kind of meditation here. And what had happened was my friend that was doing kinesiology on me didn't even know I had a deceased brother. We were more acquaintances and getting to know each other. And he spoke through her. She had never channeled before. All of a sudden, I could feel his presence beforehand. I was laying on the beach. We were waiting to go and pick oysters, waiting for the tide to go out. And all of a sudden she says, your brother is here. And I said, I know. She said, you have a deceased brother. And I said, yes. And then he spoke through her, and that had never happened before. And his message was to meditate. So it wasn't for me to be able to communicate with him more. It was to heal the depression. So I found a place. I stumbled across a place and started learning meditation right away in a live classroom setting. And within 3 months, I was off the antidepressants that I had been on for about 6 months. And my doctor was very upset, didn't want me to go off it. He said, you're going to be on this for the rest of your life. You have severe depression. And anyway, I never went back on the medication.
Wow.
And so that got me started on my journey.
That is so amazing. So your brother took his own life. He passed. And then you had depression in your life, and he told you to meditate. And isn't it so amazing that the same experience overcame you in your life, and you were heading down that trajectory of depression? And just for his spirit to come and give you this tool of how to solve this problem. It's like what we all do as souls, to just overcome and then leave a little note behind for someone else. Like, hey, you can overcome this. I overcame it. Or I figured out this tool right before I go. Like, let me give it to someone else. That is just such a profound thing about having a spiritual experience, is being able to leave something behind for someone else so that it can get them a little bit further than you got. When I was years ago, I was going through chronic depression for 4 or 5 years, undiagnosed. I didn't know what it was. I had no no IQ about it. And I was suicidal, and I was crying out to God. I was a missionary my entire life. And so for me to have a spiritual problem was like, it was impossible to overcome because I had so much built up about my spiritual identity. It was like the peak existential identity for me. So to basically overcome this depression, God had to intervene and say, hey, look, you need to try meditation. And just spending time in that space, the still space, was something I'd never done before, even as a man of God for my entire life from age 11. I had never been in that space of stillness with God. And it's amazing how meditation is a tool that, like, it's just a spiritual tool that can heal so much. And it seems like we genuinely need, as spiritual beings, just to go into this chamber space inside of ourselves. And the transformation and the healing that can occur there is so profound.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so went from there. And so I started reading. I just started reading about the chakras, about being psychic. And so in all my daily meditations, and like you, I had been severely depressed for years. And this was 28 years ago, 28 years ago. It was just a new thing that people were becoming diagnosed with depression. Before that, 35 years ago, to me, it wasn't out there. And so I started to learn how to move energy within myself and to start to heal myself. And then I had friends who would say later on, then I studied shamanism, and it just went from one thing to another. So I was constantly training.
What has been the struggle for you in overcoming that resistance to just learning? I guess in the beginning, you're a student and you have such an open mind, but as the years go on and you build these ideas about what's true, do you have resistance to learning new things? And how can people overcome that?
I can often be the queen of resistance. And really the greatest resistance for me, and what I find in my clients, is resistance to our greatness. It's really, and I'm speaking not so much as a human being, but as a soul. The soul is already so amazing and so great, and a part of God, an extension of God, really. And so my greatest resistance was about 10 years ago. Yeah, it was a decade ago. And prior to that, I told you I had people saying, oh, you should teach, you're a healer, those sorts of things. And I kept saying no. And then I met people. When I met one of my spiritual teachers, she said, very soon after meeting me, I did a reading with her. She said, you're a spiritual teacher. And I just silently thought to myself, you're crazy. You have no idea what you're talking about. And I let it go. And then someone else said the same thing to me about a year later. And I thought the same thing. But it had it stuck a little bit. And then I did a retreat for myself, a 1-week meditation retreat in my home. And so I meditated 10 to 14 hours a day. And at the end of the retreat, the guidance I received was that I was a spiritual teacher, and it was time to step into that.
Wow.
I was so shocked. I had so much resistance. I had a complete meltdown. All I could do was cry. All my stuff came up. I'm not good enough. And I kept hearing over and over, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? And this false sense of humility, or distorted sense of humility, that we need to be humble. And so all my stuff came up, and I just cried and cried. And it really impacted me in such great ways. And it was a very difficult 3 years following that, very challenging form. And the thing is, I already had students. I was teaching. I was already healing. I was doing a lot of spiritual work for other people, and had been for over a decade. I had my own spiritual interior design business. And so I would practice shamanism. I would do readings for some of my clients that were open to it. So I'd been doing that, but I never embraced it and did it full time. So it was that was the greatest resistance ever. And moving beyond, that's why I say it's progressive. It's always progressive.
So you're enjoying this podcast. You've got something to do after. You've got something to do later. So you're enjoying this podcast and you've got something to do later. Well, look, times are hard. It takes a long time. You got to get in your car to go somewhere, do something. So you're enjoying this podcast, but you've got a lot to do today. Time's going by. Days fly by. Lots to do. Time in the car, driving, getting your clothes on, getting your kids ready for school. You need something to get you through the day. Damn it, I wish I had it with me. I don't have it. Okay, so then it's not going to be Mojo. It's going to be, what would you do if today was the last day for you? If you got walked outside your door and you got clipped, taken out, something hit you in the head, done. Okay, ready? So you're enjoying this podcast and you want to know, how can I get more? Where can I go to the next? So you're enjoying this podcast. Look, you enjoy the podcast. You're wondering how to get more. Where can I go deeper? Did you enjoy this podcast? So are you enjoying the podcast? Because if so, hey, you're enjoying the podcast and you're wondering, how can I take this one step further? How can I dive deeper into this kind of stuff? That's the GodXP community. We've been building it and growing it progressively a long time, Yo, you're considering. So you enjoy the podcast and you want to know how to take the next step. How can you get deeper in this stuff? You know, we've been growing a community alongside the podcast, one person at a time, and it's gotten pretty poppin' now. We've been doing this for a while. So I invite you to take part in the community. You can get lifetime access to the community right now for a limited time with purchase of any GodXP course. So highly recommend it. You can also purchase community access on its own, but it's definitely recommended that you get it for free by signing up for a course so that you can feel like a part of the fellowship, because everyone in there right now, for the most part, not everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, but the majority of them came from a course, started with a course. So they got some good training and some bonding in that, and I highly recommend you have that experience as well. But of course, you're invited to just purchase the community, get in, watch all the free content. There's free meditation videos in there. There's a bunch of free articles and interesting other videos. So you can meet people who are interested in expanding themselves and figuring out what life's all about for them as well. And it's just a great place to make friends. Friendships are going down. And it's just a great place to be in these times when there's a lot of negativity in communities online. And this is a place where like world changers are getting together, you know, and powering up. So I highly recommend, if you love the show, go where other people love the show, you know, meet other people who are into this show. That's what I would recommend. Go to godxp.com/community and find out more.
I was already healing. I was doing a lot of spiritual work for other people and had been for over a decade. I had my own spiritual interior design business. And so I would practice shamanism. I would do readings for some of my clients that were open to it. So I'd been doing that, but I never embraced it and did it full time. So that was the greatest resistance ever. And moving beyond, that's why I say it's progressive. It's always progressive.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. It makes me wonder how many people that we hear of, these amazing stories of people who go through these incubation periods in life, and then now we know of them. I wonder how many of those stories come with that period of just adolescent period of growth in your career and in your identity. I definitely have gone through that. I think when I decided to start GodXP, I think it was around the time that I felt the calling to take a spiritual approach to my professional life, I guess is one way to say it. I thought I had arrived. I think like 4 or 5 years later, I finally started to be consistent. And the whole time, those 4 or 5 years, I thought I was there, but I was constantly evolving. And I think what people see now is, you know, they see me producing things now. And so it's like, oh, this guy's got it together. But I still see it as I guess we all have an ideal that we want to reach. But, you know, I guess that's it. There's a chasm, there's an ever increasing chasm between us and our ideal. And I think that the teacher, or the healer, or the light worker, or just anyone in any profession, really, they find a way to be productive today. And I think we're all works in progress, but finding a way to produce what you were uniquely meant to produce today is living in the moment.
And exactly, and evolving through that. And so your comment around, for a while there, you thought you had arrived, and we never really arrived. You discovered that, but you had to go through that. And it was actually that same spiritual teacher said to me a few years ago, well, I was doing another retreat online and she was guiding it. And she said to me, "You've healed all your wounds." And I said, "Are you crazy? I don't know that I'll ever be done." She said, "No, you've really healed all your wounds." So she's telling me I've arrived.
Wow.
And I never accepted it. And it's not true, because the more we evolve, there's always a deeper layer. And I often say to people, whenever you take a giant step forward, whatever stopped you from doing it before will come up. So there is always another layer. And so I go back to what you said in the beginning about being bold. Well, that bold, it's not like it comes with a price tag, but it's not just like all of a sudden I'm bold. I've worked up to it. So whatever has prevented me from being bold, I've had to heal and create the space for boldness. So whatever the ideal is, the work we do is really about creating the space.
Yeah.
For that.
That is so good. That is so true. It feels like I teach a weekly meditation class. I was just telling in the class yesterday, I was just saying how in the hard times is when you want to cultivate the peace, the inner peace, so that in the hard times, it's still there. Even when everything else falls away, you still have that root in there of inner peace. And it's like, there's an expression like, if you don't have God in the summer of your life, he won't be there in the winter of your life. And that's like keeping the habit of just being on the path that you're on and having a daily practice that can allow you to cultivate that, because it's not all up when you're on the path. You go back down and up and down. So in those down times, it's so essential to have what you built. And that is the fruit of the spirit that you get to appreciate in the hard times, you know. Wow. That's a true teacher. Always go further. You can go further. But, you know, it's like you said earlier, the teacher that told you had arrived, well, she's telling you that you've graduated from her teaching. And God is the guru. The true teacher is God. And there's no limit to his teachings. But the teachings that we find here on earth, like the gurus here, are meant to get us to a truer place in ourselves where we can take over our own guruship and start to communicate with God directly and have that discipleship directly. And I think that's another thing that I think people resist so much, is just learning from teachers who are here alive on earth, especially in the West. It's not very popular to devote yourself to someone else's teachings or someone else's leadership. And I think it's so essential to have good mentors in life. And this idea that, you know, the idea of individuation and our individuality is so important and essential to our being. However, I do feel like there's so much to be gained from humbling oneself and finding a mentor in life, multiple mentors in life. And so it's like a paradox where you want to have a direct discipleship with the universe, the source, God, what have you. But then you also want to be humble enough to learn from the people who are preceding you in whatever path that you feel you're on. And so people get lost in following one or not following any. And I think that the spiritual journey kind of requires you to have both, to have a consciousness where you're directly connected to your source, and then also a consciousness where you are one with humanity and you learn from the rabbi in your tribe, and you give to the people who are coming up but younger than you. And so I don't know what the question is there, but I guess as a teacher yourself, as a spiritual teacher yourself, you had to overcome so much resistance to, who am I to teach? Who am I to lead or guide? And that kind of stems from that same cultural, societal resistance that we all have to following and not being our own sovereign individual. So yeah, how can people who are called to lead, who are called to teach, and who are called to guide and give in that way, how can they overcome that bias or that resistance in their mind?
Is the best way to overcome the resistance is to breathe into it, is to sink into it and accept all the resistance, because the path is through. It's not around. We need to move into that resistance. And it's good to find somebody, I think, who we want to be at their level. There's something about them. We can all feel someone else's energy, right? To a certain extent, but it's really someone who, I'll give you an example. So I'm teaching my Azarius online energy healing program, and it's a certification program. So I have these people that know they're healers and they're in the program. And what has surprised some of them the most is the whole program is helping them evolve spiritually. That's what it's about. It's about their own healing and empowerment. And it's really about helping them move beyond their resistance, move beyond all the obstacles, all the energetic blocks, and let God, the universe, flow through them in bigger ways. It's creating that space. And I'm just going to tell you a story. Last night was our class. We meet weekly for 2 hours. And I led a meditation to help them open up to a greater level, to receiving God. And then I did this really powerful spiritual practice for 12 minutes. It was like 12 minutes and 12 seconds. I could not believe what happened. I'll tell you what happened. Within a minute or two, I moved into the heights of ecstasy. And while I'm experiencing this ecstatic state of God moving through me, was so amazing, but so fast. I thought, how is this happening? And I could tune into my students online, and they were so open to the experience. They have opened themselves up to me, because the more they do that, the more they experience and the more they evolve. And so there was just this, we're all just open to God. And then the responses afterwards, one of my students said, "What happened? What was that? I started experiencing this and this." And so that's what can happen. That's what can happen. And so, sure, I'm teaching my own Azarius online energy healing, and I have other programs, and I'm developing another program, and I am moving toward teaching spiritual leadership, because that's where my heart is really heading. And it's through this Azarius online energy healing that, to me, really, to be a spiritual leader, often we become a healer first. We do that. And teaching meditation, absolutely, in many ways, you are a healer. When you're teaching meditation, you're helping people heal and grow. And so to me, that is the ultimate. The soul is already an extension of God, and it's through the human form that we access that. And that's, to me, the ultimate ideal, is to really surrender our lives to God, the universe flowing through us, so we can help others in humanity do the same thing.
Yeah. Amen to that, sister. That's awesome. Your spiritual leadership. You have client magnet courses, and you're talking about spiritual leadership. So let's just go right into that with attracting the right clients and how you say using spiritual awareness. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that and like where that came from?
Okay. So it's some of the, it's more the same thing in that if you're a coach, for example, you want to attract clients and you want to attract the right souls, the best clients for you. And so it's becoming more of who you truly are and radiating that out in the world, and you attract them. So the clients I get, I am really unevolved when it comes to social media and marketing and all that sort of thing. For me, what I realize is if I speak, I'm getting the energy out there and I'm trusting that the right people will find me. But they come in all sorts of different doors. I say to people, well, how did you find me? I don't know. I have no idea. And a lot of them don't know. Or it's, oh, a friend told me about you and said I should have a chakra reading. And so all the programs are really about healing and empowerment in different ways. So how do people recognize what they want to heal? They look at that in themselves, but also where do they want to get to? So if someone is a coach, every single coach hits a plateau at some point where you need to evolve more, and suddenly you're not getting as many clients, or it's just not happening the way you want it to. So we need our own healing and we need someone else to help us. So it's so cool to watch. I was actually doing my throat chakra program and I worked with some coaches, and that's what they wanted to focus on. And within 6-8 weeks, they have a group filled with clients and they're off and running, because it was just a matter of helping them get to the next level spiritually so that they can be of greater service.
That's so amazing. I think so many, like you said, healers and light workers could benefit from that. I know myself, it can be so lonely when you're trying to do this thing that's so unique to you and you don't have this big network of people. And when you run into one of these plateaus, it's basically just you and God. You have to just wait until you figure it out. And there's been a lot of times in my career like that, where a year might go by, 2 years might go by, where I just feel stuck in molasses spiritually. And when you make this your whole life, you still have to keep going and push through it. You can't just lean back on your Homer Simpson personality and just be on the couch drinking beers for years. Or you can, but we've already established where we get our satisfaction, and that's from growing spiritually. And so that sounds amazing that you have created this system for people to step into their leadership and to do it in an authentic spiritual way, in a way that's authentic to their own self, to their own soul. So you mentioned that you were working with your throat chakra course or group. And you also wrote a book on the throat chakra. So where did this come from, this focus on the throat chakra in your life? And why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Okay. So I knew a number of years ago that I would write a book. I thought I would write a book on heart-centered shamanism, or shamanism through the heart. And it wasn't the book. So that retreat I told you about, where my teacher said, you've healed all your wounds. At the end of that retreat, my big guidance was, now is the time to write a book. And at that time I thought, oh, I think I'm going to write a book on living from your deathbed. That was going to be the title, because I often will meditate and imagine myself old on my deathbed, and what am I grateful for in my life, and what are my regrets? And so let's change those regrets now, right? So that sort of message. And I thought, I need help, because I love to write, or I used to love to write when I was younger, but I don't have a lot of experience at writing. So I hired a company to help me write that book and got an editor and all of that. And part of it was helping the company help me identify who my ideal client was. I had no idea. It took me a month. It took me a month to figure out what I was going to write about, because I changed my mind. And what I realized was there was some more resistance, because all my clients, what I noticed, they all have throat chakra issues, or the bulk of them, and serious throat chakra issues. And I have had serious throat chakra issues. And this was part of healing my throat chakra to the next level, was to write about it and create this program. And so it was an amazing experience. And it was what humanity needed from me at that time.
Yeah.
And it was really God flowing through me. So when I wrote the book, I wrote it in 8 days, and I would write for 4 hours a day. I would write 2 chapters a day. There's 16 chapters. But before that, I would meditate on really letting God flow through me. So even it's saved on my computer as God's book. And then my second book, Client Magnet, is saved as God's book 2. And there's a file, God's book 3, but there's not a lot in there right now. And so when I would write, I would just get into that state of God flowing through me, and I would close my eyes and I would type, and I didn't filter anything. And I tried to just let it rip, let God flow through me in that way and get it onto paper. And then it can all be edited from the level of the mind later, and even the level of the heart, but just opening up. And so previous to starting that process of writing, I would go to this creek every day near where we lived. I would walk there, and I would, to me, there's so much love in the water flows, and it's the element of water is connection and love and God flowing through us. So I would meditate by this creek and practice God flowing through me. And I would just pray and open myself up and ask, please write the best book you can through me, whatever it is you want to write. And so it was an amazing process, because in some ways I witnessed myself writing the book, but I certainly can't take all the credit for the book, far from it.
No, that is amazing. And it's that higher place of consciousness that you're tapping into in yourself that I think people could really, really benefit from taking with them. Like, you can always co-create your reality with God, with your highest state of consciousness. You don't always have to just live from the regular conscious state that you're already in all the time. So many of our creative projects were like, oh man, I have to do this, or I'm so behind in this. But if you made it fun, if you could find a way to make it a co-creation with the universe in this moment, then maybe you would have the energy, and maybe it would be it could flow very easily. That's why grind against reality to create something when we have this amazing connection with infinite intelligence. That is so amazing. I love that you said it's what humanity needed from you at that time, and you were just the vessel for bringing it in. I definitely feel that way about my own book. I wasn't an expert in depression or mental health, but it was just the book I needed to write so that I could close this story in my life, this epic in my life, and bless someone else with it. And so I think that there can be a lot of cynicism around, why do people productize something that's supposed to be helpful or spiritual? And I think it's because without putting a price on it, no one will take it seriously, is one, but also just because we have to get it out as we can in the moment, and we are just one person. And so writing a book, like, I wasn't an author when I wrote the book, but I just needed to do something to help at that time. And so I wrote a book, and it manifested itself as a book. But it could have been a course, it could have been a song, it could have been a piece of art. And so I think it's relieving and inspiring to hear someone else say that they went through the same experience in their life to procure something that is very spiritually meaningful. I've always felt like a creative, and so I felt some authority to create whatever it is. And I try to manifest creativity in my self-expression in life. I try to make my life like performance art. And with writing a book, there's so many voices of criticism that I've built up that I kept hearing. And that was a big process of working through those voices of criticism. From the beginning to the end of the book, I was closing out voices that I built up from childhood, old friends, negative things family members have said, or what have you, inadvertent things that I attached myself to, voices of criticism. And I think the big transformation was just letting go of all those preconditioned ideas of my limitations. It wasn't about the depression anymore, but it was like it was like hook points that were holding the depression onto me. It was like little things, little voices or interactions I had in my past that were still just latching the depression onto my identity, that I think writing the book allowed me to work through and get out. Now you've got books, you've got courses, you're moving into a new phase. You still have the throat chakra stuff all available, but your new program is about the root chakra, yeah?
So this client of mine asked me when I was going to teach the type of energy healing that I do. And she said to me, I know I'm a healer and I really want you to teach me. And that was it for me. That was God moving through her saying, now is the time. Now is the time. And I was a little nervous because I had to do this on my own. Nobody taught me how to teach online energy healing. I had so much fun doing it, and I'm so grateful. And it's my most rewarding program. But the reason I am doing the root chakra program right now is because that is the fundamental work that is consistent throughout all my programs. And so it came to me that it would be really great to offer a shorter program where people can just get great bang for their buck and get them off and running, because my other programs are longer. It's a short-term program where they can actually really create great change within themselves and move beyond their obstacles. I talked about the root chakra being about safety and stability, trust and faith, and responsibility and accomplishment. So it's really to help people clear the energy so they can accept greater spiritual responsibility. That is primarily the purpose of it from my perspective, but it might just be that they want to accomplish something. They just want to move to a new level. They can be a coach, or it can be a person that they're just feeling stuck in their lives. It can move so much and create change. And in that program, in all my programs, I teach people how to become their own energy worker. That's the type of meditations and spiritual practices. And doing the energy healing is a huge bonus because it's just moving more energy.
Yeah.
So it's helping people step into their power.
That's so awesome. Everyone's running around like chickens with their heads cut off, screaming that the sky is falling. But if you and I were born 200, 400, or 1600 years ago, the chaos, disorientation, and confusion would still be there. There's nothing new under the sun. If there's anything I've learned from reading history books. And it's the silent operators who know what they're doing here in life, in general, fulfilling their purpose still, getting all the health, wealth, love, and happiness that's offered in this world today, right now. See, the world's not going to end today. You're not going to die today, but the clock is ticking. So what are you going to do to make sure that you get yours? See, only you can save you, and only you can determine why you're really here. This life is a one-player game. No one else is going to be able to save you. So, how are you going to get your health, wealth, love, and happiness? How are you going to squeeze every last drop of existential potential out of this life for you? You might not feel connected to the universe. You might not feel like you have a divine purpose here, but you must want to squeeze every last drop of potential out of your life before you die. And if you do, then I recommend you go to deathmastery.com right now and join the next spiritual fitness camp. This is a concrete way to level up your spirit for you. Self-transformation through active meditation and writing, because no one knows what you're going through. No one knows why you're here. But God, the universe, the source, the divine intelligence, whatever you want to call it, this game is between the two of you. There's other spiritual fitness athletes in the community right now, designing their life, clarifying their self-image, and building a concrete roadmap to fulfill their existential potential in this lifetime. Go to deathmastery.com right now and sign yourself up for the next one. They're 1 week long meditation and writing camps designed to help clarify your life and give you supernatural momentum towards your ultimate goals. Whatever that is for you: health, wealth, love, and happiness. Ultimately, dying like a hero going home. Forget all this nonsense going on in the news, in social media, entertainment. It's all here as an illusion to distract you. That's a part of the game. Are you ready to level up? Wake up from this shit. Quit playing around. Go to deathmastery.com right now. Use code GodXP20 and get 20% off your next camp. I'll see you on the other side. So when someone becomes aware of their energy and aware of their spiritual composition in life, and they start to diagnose themselves and start to notice things that are blocked in their life, like you said, stability or insecurities, things, insufficiency of self-expression, or however it manifests itself. What is your advice for someone who's starting off on the path and starting to realize that they have an energy body and that they're starting to have this experience of it, and they want to self-diagnose their problems and start to work through their energy? What's your advice for that person on day one?
Great question. Thank you. I'll try and keep it as simple as possible. I encourage people to move into their darkness, move into the fear, move into whatever is holding you back, move into those difficult places, because that's the path to the light. That is the path through. And so for me, it has been meditation primarily, and other spiritual practices, shamanism, acupressure, whatever you're choosing, is to make that conscious choice. How serious are you? If you're really serious, sit down on a chair, be comfortable, and breathe fully. When we breathe with the lower abdomen, this makes such a big difference. If you try and breathe to a 6 or 8 count on the inhale and 6 or 8 count on the exhale, it affects the brain. So our brain function is in the medulla oblongata, the back part of the brain. So when we breathe fully with the lower abdomen, and I'm talking below the navel, it changes that brain function to the frontal lobal brain. And what happens then, it frees up the subconscious. So when you first start to, as you call it, self-diagnose, that is from the level of the mind. But when we breathe fully, we can go into that, what we are currently aware of, and go deeper. And we start to access the subconscious. And that's where the energy blocks are held. And they're usually incomplete emotions we weren't able to finish feeling as a small child, is usually, or even a baby, even in the womb. I do a lot of healing with people at the level of the womb. And so if you can stay with that and allow yourself to feel the discomfort, even if it involves crying or feeling whatever is in there, you will gain a deeper understanding. And if you think of it as that's the broom that sweeps your subconscious clean. And so for years, I did this sort of thing. I didn't use the full breath in the beginning. It still helped. I was able to move through a lot of it that way. And so you stay with that and it starts to open you up. It's where I don't do much in the way of mindset, and I don't teach mindset because we're trying to overcome. Mindset works. It depends on what level of realization a person is at. So at a certain level of realization, mindset works. That's as far as you can get. And then mindset doesn't help you get to where you really want to be. You get tired of doing it. Okay, well, it's not working. I still have this problem. So this sort of approach helps you clear the energy, and then you want to empower yourself. And we empower ourselves through continuing to breathe fully and reparent that inner child. And we start to reprogram ourselves we change the past. We give ourselves new subconscious beliefs. So in a way, it's mindset on steroids. It affects our cells at every level. And then we go out into the world and we're different. And we feel different. The old problems start to go away.
Yeah. Yeah. That is beautifully said. We have these built-in memories in our being. It's like, yes, we have a body and a mind, but we are just ourselves. And so these memories from our past, they are us. And so to release those is to really transform who you are. Yeah, you might look the same, but you will feel different in every cell. And we all have those things in our past that we just latch onto. And so it's so funny how I talked about it yesterday in my meditation teaching, but like when you have these traumatic memories in the past, like it's like if you get an injury in your muscle and we tense, the muscles around that injury will contract and tense. And if you don't ever heal it, you'll just have this, this tension in your body. It could last for months, years. And it's funny how the mind is the same way. And in order to get rid of those things, you really just need to relax, rest the mind, and go into that stillness space, and the tensions release, and the way you're carrying your body changes. I had a shoulder neck injury from sports, and I didn't realize how much tension I was carrying in my shoulder. I was walking like this so often, and having to relax and teach myself to relax the posture and to release that tension. And over time, my spine has corrected itself. My shoulders have rounded back again. And it's really just a retraining, just like it is with the mind. And some of those things go back so far. They're like injuries we're carrying from 4 or 5 years old.
Definitely, definitely. And we can also, when we're doing this sort of practice, things can come up. So let's say our mom yelled at us. Let's say your mother yelled at you when you were 4 and it terrified you and it just was so upsetting. So many people say, well, don't be a victim. Don't be a victim. Well, to really feel that feeling fully, I think you need to be a victim for a brief period of time. You need to see how hard that was on you. You need to acknowledge it and let it move through you. And it's through letting it move through you that then you can see that, wow, your mother was overwhelmed. She was really having a hard time and she had her own wounds. And so and then forgiveness becomes natural. To me, if we just try and jump right into forgiveness, we skip the important pieces. We are negating in some cases and sometimes our experience. And so we really want to process then at a deep level. And a lot of times, even through the energy healing that I do, someone may all of a sudden, they don't have any shoulder pain. And then through a healing session, they get this intense shoulder pain. And it's because there's energy. There was a wound that was locked in the body and it starts to release. And then by the end of the healing session, it's gone. And they'll ask me, like, what happened? What was that about? And it hadn't manifested to the physical level yet. So it builds and builds in us energetically. And so even a sports injury can be where you have constant pain. Usually that sort of thing I can clear up in one energy healing session because there's energy stuck there. There's energy and it's moved to that level.
Yeah. Well, might need your help with that pretty soon here because it's gotten a lot better actually. I still do feel like there's about 15 to 10% of just like pain stuck. And it just feels like now it feels like a chronic condition. And I thought, well, my body heals itself almost perfectly in every other way. But for some reason, this injury has not left me for over a year. So
yeah. And so I would love to help you. And in the meantime, because you're already so powerful, you're doing the work. You're really doing the work, Anthony. And so often, if I may say, that can be a throat chakra issue. So what is your shoulder trying to tell you about how you need to level up? What is the next step for you, especially with the throat chakra? And the throat chakra is all about expressing your soul's purpose. Yes, it's about being seen and heard. It's about speaking your truth. But ultimately, it's about expressing your soul's purpose in the world. So I just want to know what's next for you, Anthony, and that this can be the avenue for you to discover that. What is it that's holding you back from that next level?
Well, let me just say that in the last year, 2, 3 years, maybe, I've felt, and people will probably think it's funny, but I've felt a limitation on my self-expression. I used to be a loud speaking person. I used to make jokes and be very much a center of attention type of person. And then my depression stemmed from me feeling narcissistic and feeling like I was abusing attention and being selfish with attention. So I really drew back and receded into myself. And I felt like that was a very spiritually liberating process. But at the same time, I think it developed a sense of shame in my personality. And for a long time, I've been making content. But in the last few years, I feel like my content, my voice has diminished, being very reserved, conservative with my personality. And a lot of it stems from being self-conscious about the way people are going to interpret me as however I see myself, being abrasive or offensive from my past. So I do have this feeling like I want to liberate my personality again and feel like I can self-express without feeling guilty or ashamed because I caught myself in a place of ignorance and I hated seeing myself that way.
Wow. Okay. Well, it sounds like you're on the right track. And I think your shoulder has some answers for you for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to meditate on that.
And I'll be holding you in my heart that you move to this next level. And so often this is what happens for us. We're over here, we're operating at this level with respect to your self-expression and the expression of God moving through you. And then in order to self-regulate, we have to swing to the opposite side. We have to go to the other opposite end of the spectrum. And so then you find yourself over there. Oh, where you pulled back, you saw yourself as a little bit of a narcissist, the center of attention, that sort of thing. So you go the complete opposite, and then the pendulum can swing back to find your center again. And so your shoulder is, my guess, is speaking to you, and I'd be happy to do a chakra reading for you if you want to help you gain some insight as to how the energy is flowing. So it's serving you. It's serving you.
Yeah, totally. I love that. And I hadn't considered that perspective until now. And having you on the show, I was excited because of your book, Heal Your Neck Issues and Let Your Throat Chakra Shine. And I thought, wow, the throat chakra is something I've tried to improve and strengthen in my life, but I've had this neck thing going on. So it's just great to have you on and just to learn from you. I've found this conversation to be so insightful, inspiring, enlightening, and rewarding. And I want to keep in touch. We'll definitely have to keep doing these.
Okay, that would be awesome. And I would like to have you on my podcast as well, Anthony. So let's keep going here.
Last thing, if you had one last piece of advice for spiritual seekers in general, what do you want people to know more than anything?
Is really face your biggest fears. Face your biggest fears, and your biggest fears will help you step into your true, authentic power and the greatness of God moving through you.
Amen. Cheryl, thank you so much. Everyone, be sure to check out Stelte Cheryl on Instagram, her website, starofdivinelight.com. You can find her courses, her coaching there. Buy her book, Heal Your Neck Issues and Let Your Throat Chakra Shine, on Amazon. Where else can they find you, Cheryl?
Facebook, LinkedIn. I think I'm getting on Twitter. I'm not sure if I'm on there yet or not.
Follow her on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. Everyone, have a good one. Be blessed, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Anthony. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.